I welcome you to my another video about electrician's tools. Today we'll have a look at this Fluke 17B Plus that is fully featured, as it can do anything you would your multimeter want to, and for affordable price that is approximately $160. I have made a table not to forget about anything. You can see it here on the monitor, and to be able to directly compare multimeters one to another. Fluke 17B Plus will be compared to Hioki DT4256, which was reviewed before, and DT4261 is actually here. We will not compare it to DT4282 because that's like double the price, or 3 times the price maybe. So and there will be more. There will be UNI-T 61E Plus and M-Probe AM 530 Euro. The table is available in Czech language. If you would want me to, I could translate it, but well, it takes some time to translate such a big table. I mean, look at it. You can't even see the letters there and numbers and anything, just the pictures in the yellow cell. So if you would like to have the table, ask me. I will then translate it and put it under the video. Until then, I think the video may be enough for you to know that the Fluke is a no-go multimeter, definitely no-go, but we will get to it. There is one more thing for the UNI-T. Well, this is 61E Plus. It has British fuses, 6.3 times 25.4 or something, just this kind of whatever inches. But there is also version UNI-T 161E. This is 61E Plus, and there is also 161E. That's the same as this one, but it has better fuses. The main fuse for amps is 10 by 38. And the fuse for the mini amps is 6 by 30. So these are the classic fuses you would see almost anywhere in good quality multimeter. So this multimeter also has a more expensive variant with better fuses, just so you know. This video has one new thing compared to other Hioki review and precision multimeters review, and it is this normal or reference. Some people may be laughing, some people may be saying, oh, it's nice, beautiful. Okay, it has 9 resistors with 0.1% precision, but I measured them, calibrated with 0.03%, and there is capacitors calibrated with 0.1%. It was a month ago with my LCR meter, and there is also 5 volts reference between these. And it's like it should be 5 volts plus minus 0.02%, but the actual value is 5.0001 volt. So it's accurate as hell. So this is kinda new thing, but I don't have the money for a huge calibrator because I would have to rob a bank or anything like this, and I don't plan to, but I'm pretty sure that this box will do the job anyway. Definitely better than not having anything like this. And yes, I used silver solder tin for soldering these things inside, and everything is a thick wire inside and such. And this normal is protected by this Hioki guy, this big belly guy who protects the ppm from not escaping the black box. Do you know what BOLTR means? It's Board of Lame Tool Reviews. AVE channel uses this term, and I was being asked by my Czech community to make a review on any Fluke or any Brymen multimeter, and also some more UNI-Ts, especially the clamp ones, but that's future. I was browsing and found some Flukes with quite good price. Good. It's Fluke 15, Fluke 17 and Fluke 18 series. On YouTube there are some reviews also for this innovated generation that ends with B+. It's not 17B, it's 17B+. Mainly it was for this particular one, this 17B+. And the reviews, well, they were biased, they were aimed more on the brand than the actual instrument. And I didn't find any true ones that would actually try doing something serious with this multimeter. There are many bugs, and none of the reviewers I have seen have found any of these. So the typical review for this multimeter was like, hello people, review time, and then flying colors and everything. I have this Fluke 17B Plus and I haven't opened it yet, but yet still I know that it's a good one. You see, it's a Fluke, it must be great. My father had a Fluke, I have a Fluke, and my coworker has a Fluke. Everyone has Fluke. Fluke means perfect, and this multimeter must be too. The other Fluke I have was my first multimeter and I still have it. Well, you know, I actually tried the other branded ones, like these ones, and these suck. So the best experience with one product of other brand and one product of another brand made me think Fluke is just the best. Now there is a pouch, nice leather, there is these probes and this temperature probe. So you insert it like this and it should measure temperature. Great! So to end the review, well, I can recommend it. It's a Fluke. I would buy Fluke even from my grandma. And this is my second multimeter I ever had, and I already know my things around these multimeters and everything. You know, I've tried some of the other brands, yeah. So the other multimeters, they are bad. They are pure turd. So you must like it. It's a Fluke. It's a friggin' Fluke, so go and buy it. This demonstration was a little more absurd and less innocent parody of, well, most of the reviews on these multimeters and practically most of the Flukes. I do it differently. As any other reviews, if you have seen my video on precision multimeters, if you have seen my two videos, well, one is main, second is on FFT, on my videos on GT4261, so you know that my reviews are more thorough and I go through any functions and I just try them. I try the maximum frequency it can measure, for example. Almost no one does that. And there will be also review for this precious Hioki DT4282. You can see it's cheaper version without these amp holes, but no, we were bamboozled because they open just if we go on the specific range, but that's future. So let's focus on this yellow guy. I think I can review multimeters since I have counted it, and I own 6 pen-type multimeters. If you don't know what is pen-type, I have one always between my tools. So this is pen type, is GD107, my favorite. I also have 5 clamp meters. I have 20 classic multimeters, just like these ones, and almost all of them have been reviewed on my main Czech channel, but this English channel isn't growing at all, basically, and so it doesn't make sense for me to invest so much time in English videos. So I only do English videos on topics that I think will be appreciated worldwide. Another fact why this review will be true and more suitable for end user is my point of view. I do not trust Fluke company as other people do, and as 2 of their voltage testers in our company have been sporadically failing, and I have personally touched live 2 times because of Fluke. I am a professional electrician. I work in industrial electric distribution, and our company produces and services distribution and power factor cabinets. So this is the professional side of myself. This is my hobby. From the professional side, where I work with live and it's 400 volts mainly, Fluke could get me killed twice. I have strong heart and I know I can hold for maybe even few seconds on live and not dying. Here in Europe we have 230/400 volts, so in these Fluke cases I had rubber boots and there was dielectric mat under me, so if I touch live I just jump out of the cabinet, but I shouldn't have touched the live, but I didn't know it was live because Fluke didn't tell me it was live. It's the problem with Fluke T110. There was recall on certain serial numbers of these testers and the recall took half a year. To be more exact, we sent them to repair, and we were without instruments for half a year. Almost no communication from Fluke service, and actually our distributor, GHV Trading, they were so embarrassed by Fluke behavior that they stepped in and they gave us brand new voltage testers Fluke 110 from their own warehouse, and they told us just to send them the fixed ones when they arrived from Fluke service. By the way, one of the new ones, these Fluke T110 that they gave us from their warehouse, one of them is also faulty, but it's not covered by the recall. So this is not a service you would get from such a renowned company as Fluke. This is like, fuck you customer, you are not important, wait half a year. Moreover, we are afraid of sending the new Fluke for another repair because its serial number is not covered by the recall. God knows in what century will they return it, or whether will they actually say that the fault was not proven and send it back, or they would just send us thick bill or anything. So in my eyes, Fluke, great name, high price and near no support for end user, at least here in Europe. Here in Central Europe, if you are small company, if you are freelancer, you would get no support, they just fuck you. And we are not alone with such an experience here in Czech Republic. So there are more electricians that hate Fluke for their behavior and for their faulty testers. So this professional experience got me negatively biased against Fluke, as they have shown a shitty attitude. But well, there is this guy, Dave Jones, you may actually know him. He's definitely more famous than me, like 1,000 times, maybe 10,000 times, I don't know. But I have quite recently, like half a year ago maybe, discovered his EV blog channel, and his experience with Fluke is absolutely different. And since he's really smart man, and I agree with him on just like almost anything, his opinion has changed my opinion a little, so now I have rather neutral bias towards Fluke. It would be unfair to mention just EV block because there is more. There is Signopath, there is Kerry Wong, there is Lorton, there is Kiss Analog. These are top of the line YouTubers too, so if I mentioned EV block, I should also mention these other channels. Dave Jones from EV block has however different point of view than me, for example, because he has worked in heavily corporational industry, as from what I've guessed from what he knows. So it seems like if you are in this segment, Fluke is like a teddy bear, and his positive opinions on Fluke can be perfectly right to the last digit. But there is also more points of view. Like if you are self-employed, if you are small company, you are then worth nothing. You are just an insect to Fluke company, and they won't bother providing you with service that would be appropriate for the price you paid for your meter or tester or whatever. You paid for the brand, you paid the price for the support, but you won't get it. My experience and Dave Jones's experience are exactly opposite, yet we are both right. Truth in general is almost never just one fact. One fact is just from one point of view. Truth is a function. Truth outputs its value that varies from the input data. Truth gives you different rightful facts based on who is asking, from what position and under what circumstances. So we can therefore make up our truth function. We can define it only based on facts that we know where they come from and under what circumstances were they seen or gathered. So this fact rule actually applies to almost any opinions in daily life, in politics or whatsoever. I have personally seen many cases where on hobby forums someone has asked the community what multimeter should he buy, and 1/3 or even 1/2 of the comments were saying go buy a Fluke, and it doesn't matter that half of the people have never touched a Fluke or seen one in real life. They just repeat what they have heard from a guy somewhere, from a professional guy who works for a big company, and the company has a name and Fluke actually holds support for them. but not for a random guy who just wants to buy his second multimeter for home use. So, I have bought this multimeter for my own money to elaborate for money earned by my primary Czech channel. Fluke has been known for its multimeters since, well, I don't know, 1980s maybe, when Fluke basically defined modern multimeter with auto-ranging, bar graph and TrueRMS in one device. Fluke used to be so ahead that it defined multimeter as we know it. But does that mean that all Fluke multimeters are perfect? You will be answering this question by yourself during this video. Now, why did I choose this 17B+? I have visited tme.eu distributor and I was looking for Fluke multimeters for review. There is, for example, Fluke 113 for affordable price of $180. How am I supposed to measure like anything? Anyway, let's climb higher. Fluke 116 for $320. More functions, but how about current? Where has it flown to? Is not present at all. Well, again, higher. And here we are at $470 with Fluke 177. But this Fluke is powered by a damned 9-volt battery in all its ugliness. So if we don't want to spend another fortune on 9-volt batteries, we must go even higher. And this time we will settle at Fluke 87V Max for $730. That's the first multimeter that actually would make sense for any DIY hobbyist. The price, it's not for any hobbyist, so I kept on looking and I figured out there are Flukes for Asian market, mainly Korean market, and they are fully featured and cheaper than classic ones. The only thing is that you don't have warranty for it, but since you would rather not claim any warranty as European, nothing really changes. So I went for Fluke 17B+ for review. Finally, after all this endless talking, we got to the multimeter itself. My apologies for the long talk, but I feel like it's necessary to tell these things prior to the review itself, because otherwise there would be angry comments all over the comment section from people who haven't seen the entire video, and they will call my review bullshit or anything like this, and that I should kill myself. Well, this actually happened on my Czech channel, as there were 3 Fluke fanatics. Really fanatics, and I doubt some of them have ever really held a Fluke in their hand and actually listened to me in the video, or at least I doubt that they would have a critical thinking ability. Anyway, unboxing. This pouch, it's a soft shell case. It's one of the nicest I have ever seen. It's synthetic leather and the yellow is actually softer than the black. Inside there is one huge compartment with walls and one pocket for your probes. The temperature K probe. The blob is nice and even. The cable is very hard to bend and actually tends to do springy stuff. So in my opinion the cable kills it a little, because it has such a strength that it can move things on your desk. It's so stiff. It's also heavy, so carrying this probe in your car will increase the fuel consumption by half a liter per 100 kilometers. The banana plugs are perfect. Insulated, sturdy, rubbery like material, great. Now to the leads. These are TL75. Absolute garbage. You could actually get more usable leads with 8 times cheaper generic OEM multimeter. These TL75, they are bad from the beginning to the end. Now, the banana plug is the classic solid material cut to 4 segments. If it wears out or loses tension, just split the space open with small flathead screwdriver and you are good. And here comes first problem. Relief. That's so hard to bend. It actually doesn't relieve anything. It just moves the stressed part of the cable 2 centimeters away. Look, if I try to bend it, stress it, it doesn't relieve anything. It only moves it backward. Why is it there? So the most frequently failing part would be here, just at the end. The insulation. It's so hard that it's even easier to bend classic stranded wire or listen with PVC insulation. What's ridiculous is the fact that commies could do it better. This
is Avomet from former Soviet Czechoslovakia. These were made in Metra Blansko company that still exists, although they couldn't keep up with other brands. So they are just dying, but they still exist. This Avomet is over 50 years old. And these are the original leads that someone as old as my grandma, for example, could actually buy at the time. And these 50 years old obsolete leads actually have more flexible insulation, and it's hold up to 150 degrees Celsius or so. These Fluke TL75 cables, they are so stiff that they even won't bend that much if you hang it on your finger. Why is the insulation made of concrete, for Christ's sake? Look at UNI-T leads you get with cheaper multimeter. These are perfectly bendable. It's soft. Or have a look at the Hioki leads. These are super soft, perfectly bendable. And you can even look at the Chinese OEM leads. This is how it should be. Even these cheap Chinese leads with GD107 multimeter, it's just more bendable than the TL75 garbage made of concrete and harder than slipknot metal band. Like, what am I supposed to do with such a strong insulation? Let's move to the handy end. It's soft and rubbery, almost like a little greasy feel, but I kinda like it. The relief, again, useless. Look at this. Look where it bends to the minimum radius. Useless piece of garbage. These are the protective caps, accidentally shorting more potentials when probing on not that safe voltage or on high current capable DC circuit. They hide the conductive area and leave you with just the tip, so it's safer. Classic ones have the cap quite narrow. Better leads, just like these Hioki leads that you will get by default with new Hioki models, have this system that not only prevents you from losing the caps but also makes it more convenient. Fluke also has TL175, I believe, made by Pomona, if I remember it correctly, just like any other leads, and they work the same way as this Hioki. Well, this is the best solution, at least today. Acceptable solution is also the classic one, but this ballistic cap of a missile? Not only it's so thick that you won't see where you are sticking your probe, but also you can be unable to stick it even in tighter places. Not to forget that if you actually stick it somewhere tight, you can be pretty sure about losing the cap while sticking the probe out. These TL75 leads are so bad that Fluke would do better not packing any leads with their multimeters, because they degrade the user experience on such a low level that one rather uses $5 probes from AliExpress, because they are just better. The only good thing about them is the tip being sharp for easy penetration of oxides layer. Talking about oxidation, the tips should be gold plated for the price of the multimeter. UNI-T, that is cheaper, has gold plated leads. All Hioki multimeters have gold plated leads, and you can even buy gold plated leads on AliExpress and their quality is great. So why does Fluke not have gold plated leads that aren't prone to oxidation? Such nickel or whatever it is, it loses conductivity and you have to use your rubber eraser. Thinking of bad leads, I remember two multimeters. It was this Ovon and this Hot Peak. Both are sold for $60 and their leads are so bad that I have never used them. And these really bad ones still have softer insulation and better reliefs than the expensive Fluke. And only the $10 multimeters have worse leads than Fluke TL75. Multimeter itself is definitely a beautiful instrument at first sight. It has classic proportions, nice, sturdy and heavy feel. It's a little edgy from the side. The rubber is just right. Body itself is perfect. Is it? Well, look at the stand. A nice leg with Fluke logo on it. Looks sturdy, yeah. But the bottom part of the tilting leg is rounded. This wouldn't be such a problem, but the body is rounded too, and you must know where I am going. Look at, for example, Hioki DT4261. Nice edges coming out, perfect for stability, just like Windows Server. Well, look at it, it doesn't tilt. Or UNI-T, the stand is not only quite wide but rubberized too, so may the body be a little narrower at the bottom, rendering the stability worse. It's actually still perfectly acceptable for UNI-T. but Fluke, stable just like Windows Millennium Edition. So, may the button presses be good, the rotary selector operation is horrible. Look at UNI-T. Look at Hyoki. Now, look at Fluke. Can you see it? Well, we are lucky it's so shockproof, because this multimeter will be falling so often because it's just unstable. What the hell is this? Garbage. Now back to the front. The display has huge numbers with height of over 2 centimeters, and it's easy to read even from distance. 3 readings per second may be average, but not for this basic accuracy of just 0.5%. Just have a look at Hyoki DT4256 that I reviewed previously. It has dual display with 6000 counts, it has bar graph, better basic accuracy, 5 times better real accuracy, and it manages to refresh 5 readings per second. And price-wise, it's close to Fluke, just a little bit more. Well, UNI-T 61E Plus may have same 3 readings per second, but this multimeter is not only cheaper, but it also has 10 times better accuracy, 6 times more counts, it has bar graph, and its bandwidth is 100 times higher. So, may the 3 readings per second be still quite standard today, it's not justified in this price range with these capabilities. Both Fluke 17B Plus and mProbe 530 have 4000 counts, or 3 full numbers, plus 3/4 at the most significant digit. So this 3 and 3/4, it's not that great. Well, it covers the 0.5% basic accuracy quite well, but you lose 1 digit in half of the cases. Well, in my opinion, 6000 counts is more convenient, because probing around lithium batteries, for example, or USB devices won't steal your most significant digit and leave you with just 3. The plexiglass has quite a radius, just like CRT televisions, so unless you sand the surface with sandpaper, which I don't recommend, you will be constantly fighting with the reflections. Now, about abrasion, look at the plexiglass of my mProbe. This is the reason I never take foil from my multimeters, and if I do, I replace it with ordinary transparent 3M tape. I also do this to my worksite reflectors. It protects the surface and can be easily changed for a new one. I, for example, did it to this Hyoki, but this Hyoki is flat screen, this is curved. The display is common for all 3 Fluke 15, Fluke 17 and Fluke 18B Plus. You can even see the LED test here that's only present on 18B Plus. Talking about seeing, how about the darkness that swallows us in the middle of measurement? Well, fortunately, Fluke has a backlight. Look at this. And unfortunately, well, have you noticed me turning it on? It's too weak. In dim areas where your eyes switch between, for example, monitor, mobile phone and instruments, the backlight may be totally insufficient. And it's the dimmest backlight of any of my multimeters I have. So look at this photo. Hyoki, Fluke, mProbe, UNI-T and Hold Peak. And now let's switch off the lights and adjust the camera appropriately. You can see the Hyoki has the brightest backlight. Fluke is the lowest backlight. mProbe, well, I hate the bluish backlight, but it still glows. The UNI-T, well, it's quite dim. but still readable. And the hold peak, well, it has auto backlight and it also shines on your selected function. So Fluke has the dimmest backlight of any of my multimeters, and I think it's a shame because you won't be able to see the value in areas with high contrast of light. Buttons are pressed rather easily and they are actually quite tactile. You can feel the press being finished, so thumbs up for the buttons. The selector has plastic moving feel. It isn't the sharpest pencil, but rather softer. Well, it's not sharp enough for me, but still perfectly acceptable. For example, my oven is sharp as hell, and the impact of the rotation into position actually vibrates so heavily that it makes your thumb sore. So Fluke is soft and it's great for tinier fingers, I would say. Plasticky feel. We can compare it to UNI-T. It's quite hard. It's sharper, definitely. Now the Hyoki, but keep in mind the Hyoki has these shutters. And now comes change. I love these. Let's try another Hyoki. Also has shutters. Nice clicky feel. This is more like plastic, but okay, acceptable. Under the tilting leg, we gain access to battery cover with this convenient lock. Well, Hyoki has two of them, so it must be like one lock for approximately $180. The bail restricts access to the compartment, but it actually goes away with the cover. So speaking of the cover, before we put it somewhere else to be lost for eternity, there is this middle contact, probably nickel, plated brass or whatever, not magnetic, and this foam, well, I remember it as the crumbly sticky thing when it gets old, but no problems replacing it after 20 years or so. These Duracells, they are original, they were packed with the multimeter, they are alkalines, and I only recommend them if you are sure they won't leak. I have performed tests of 196 AA batteries and accumulators, is publicly available on my channel, and I am also near the end of alkaline recharge test that also involves leaking test. Duracells were quite often prone to leakage, and more to the catastrophic leak, not just the tiny fart, they just leak all over the place. Panasonic and GP, they also leak. For the contrast, Amazon Basics and Conrad Energy batteries were all without any sign of leakage, so you may look for these, Conrad or Amazon Basics. Or you can get Energizer Lithium for 3 amp hours and more than 10 years of shelf life. Well, speaking of battery life, this Fluke would definitely benefit from these expensive lithium batteries, since its power consumption is just 1.38 milliamps. Average AA battery has a capacity around 2.5 amp hour, so that would leave us with 2.5 months of constantly running this multimeter on DCV. Well, of course, beeping, backlight, capacitor test, resistance test or diode test, they are more power hungry. The multimeter switches off at 1.1 volt per cell, so it isn't suitable for rechargeable nickel metal hydrides. Well, it doesn't need them anyway, so why bother? Actually. In contrast, for example, my UNI-T consumes 10 milliamps out of its AAAs with runtime of just 3 days straight, or my Hyoki that holds for 10 days with one set of 3 AA's. Why the power consumption difference? I have also heard a fairy tale on how that determines the superior master grade multimeter in contrast to the plebs. Well, what does Fluke actually power? There is one basic microcontroller with no TrueRMS, just one low power op amp and one display that doesn't consume almost anything. Well, that's all. UNI-T, in the contrast, has 10 times better accuracy, so that calls for higher power consumption. It also has bar graph, so most probably there are 2 ADCs running at the same time, or one ADC doing all the stuff, and it maintains accuracy up to 700 kHz. That's insane. And the TrueRMS converter in this multimeter is not only fast as hell, but also very accurate. Oh, and the multimeter also measures temperature of the current shunt for compensation, which it does perfectly. Hyoki's power consumption is also perfectly justified. It has dual display, it has blown fuse indicator, it has Bluetooth communication, and just like this UNI-T, it also has PC communication. And the best part is that the Hyoki DT4261 has built-in low frequency scope, and it performs FFT to give you up to the 30th harmonic frequency RMS value, and it calculates THD for both voltage and frequency with 0.01% resolution. Not to forget, so smart TrueRMS converter that it can integrate both DC offset alongside with ripple in special AC/DC mode, as we have just seen me switching into, or just it can separate them as we are used to. So, power consumption of these two are perfectly justified. Fluke is just so primitive, there is nothing that would drain the batteries, so that's why it has so low power consumption. No TrueRMS, no fancy functions, no bar graph, no double display, just nothing. On the other hand, well, there is also some unjustified power consumption. This M probe, being powered from 9V block, its runtime is only 2.5 days. I had to buy new 9V battery once in 2 weeks or so. Well, what the actual fuck, M probe? You only have basic TrueRMS and just bar graph. So why are you hungry? And what a stupid decision is it to make a power-hungry instrument eat one of the most uneconomic battery type ever. I was feeding it fresh 9V just like you feed MG42 machine gun with cartridge belt. By the way, I am currently running test of 33 9V batteries, but the test will take maybe a month or so. Let's open the multimeter to see its guts. Some undressing is needed, just like when having a good time with the beautiful girl. We then have 4 plus 2 screws that go straight into plastic. Moreover, you need to undo them to change your fuse. What a screw up from Fluke to undo 6 screws that go into plastic to change your frigging fuse. This was thought out by an idiot. So we have taken the screws out of the sheared threads. The chassis is one of the sturdiest ones I have ever held in my hands. It feels like premium quality, you can't even bend the half case. The controller is the blob type, so one never knows what piece of silicon actually runs this thing. And here lies nice op amp, quite a precise stuff. These SO16s, they are some encoders from 8 to 3, something like electronic switch. I remember this one to be EEPROM memory, fortunately without Alzheimer, because it remembers all the adjustment data, or more commonly called calibration data. And talking about calibration and adjustment, there is this trimmer, definitely for something, but Fluke is a good guy and has made public the process how to calibrate your Fluke 17B+. You short 2 terminals of these, and then you just feed the multimeter with different signals it needs, and then press hold as OK, go to the next range. I think it should be mandatory and required by law to make multimeters easy to adjust, either by mechanical trimmers or by shorting 2 potentials and not needing any custom proprietary programmer. Well, of course, calibration and adjustment manuals should be available publicly too, just like Fluke has it. PCB is gold plated, which is always nice to see, as gold doesn't tend to oxidize. The input protection is the reason why I used to hate UNI-T multimeters so much back then. They used to be powered by 9V batteries, and moreover they had such a terrible input protection that they were as easy to kill as it was to kill a Matex. Matex used to manufacture high-end multimeters with awesome functionality but also significant unreliability. Well, today UNI-Ts have evolved and they are just as good as any other top-tier brands. But this is Fluke review, so let's jump on it. These 10x38mm fuses with high rupturing capacity capacity are always nice to have, but expensive to replace, so remember that. They can extinguish hell of an arc with their scent fill, so it doesn't happen that the metal vaporizes and condenses on the glass walls of classic glass fuse and continues to conduct. Well, these are Busman. I believe Eaton or someone has bought them. Their rating is however not written on them. They only have colorful stripes and a stupid code where you need to perform university grade calculations to determine the actual current value, like it was a problem to use standard SI units entire world uses. Here lies our current shunt. It's basically a wire with greater resistance than copper, so it acts as a resistor with low ohmic value. This represents almost that short circuit, so it won't affect the object under test that much, but it will still also give us sufficient voltage loss for the multimeter to measure the voltage across the shunt and convert the voltage into amps based on Ohm's law and knowing the resistance of the shunt. UNI-T, for example, goes even further as it has temperature compensation for the current shunt, because the current shunt, if it heats up, its voltage increases and the multimeter would have false readings going up. Unfortunately, none of my multimeters apart from UNI-T have the temperature compensation. Moreover, fuses also produce heat when they get close to nominal current, so these would be too hot pieces. The green resistor is big wire wound resistor with 1 mega ohm that not only increases the input resistance but also makes the input voltage a little softer. So if overvoltage happens, R20 softens it. PTC softens it even further, and varistors sacrifice themselves to save the multimeter. If there wasn't for R20, the varistors would explode and no further protect the instrument, frying the controller to one big glowing red blob. But softened voltage bar R20 is easier to limit if varistors begin dragging current from it. Both varistors and R20 will then dissipate enormous amount of heat, so of course R20 must not arc between the windings. In such situations you usually need to replace the PTC and the varistors because they may lower their engage voltage, so you need to replace them once this happens. I would personally put heat shrink on them so that if they explode they won't cause any further damage to the multimeter. This efficiently voltage limited input then goes through few small SMD resistors with 10 mega ohms total. And they altogether carry quite similar protection as R20. If they weren't available during manufacturing, they would put these R34 instead. That would look similarly to R20. This is exactly how input protection is done. Some other brands like to use gas discharge tubes instead of varistors. They are more expensive but withstand much greater surge than varistor. The last thing to be mentioned is this. It's probably RC filter that would limit the bandwidth to 16 kHz, but I don't know that for sure. Regarding voltage measurement, Fluke is just ordinary multimeter. Well, there is no swiftness, it just takes its time, like 4 times cheaper multimeters. Quite swift, could be better, definitely. It's as fast as, for example, this UNI-T UT61E+, but this UNI-T has 10 times better accuracy, 0.05% compared to ordinary 0.5% Fluke. So UNI-T does have right to be slow, Fluke doesn't. So let's compare Fluke slow. Let's try UNI-T. These leads are actually from this UNI-T, so it may be familiar with them. The reflections, well, screw them. The same speed, but significantly better accuracy, 10 times. Now, let's try Hyoki. Hyokis are frigging fast multimeters. No. Now let's try it in auto mode. Still fast. Now let's try a multimeter that used to be the fastest multimeter in the world. It's time. These millivolts. So the Fluke is acceptably fast, but not that fast as this price fast and this accuracy fast. If you would like to see something that is slow as hell, just look at this M probe. Switch it to DC and look how slow this M probe is. It takes so long. It's like analog voltmeter or something. So slow. Come on, M probe. You are Germans. You are better than this. What I like about the Fluke is that it continues to measure voltage even over 1000 volts, which is not common. Well, of course you shouldn't feed your multimeter with high voltage, but younger me was experimenting with my high voltage generator and I couldn't find any multimeter that would measure over 1 kilovolt, so I used my DT830 back then. Well, the 200 microfarad capacitor was at approximately 1.8 kilovolt, I believe, when I accidentally shorted it. Needless to say, I was blinded for a minute and was hearing nothing but beeping for like 5 minutes straight. The wires of course vaporized, they just weren't there. Of course you shouldn't reconstruct this at your home. So, TrueRMS, I test that on a square feeding from my arbitrary generator. I can show you. This is my oscilloscope, this is my function generator, soldering iron, my main power supply, my GVDA power supply, and my another Raiden power supply. So these are the instruments I use most. I also have like 600 watts load, but the load is down here and I don't want you to see the mess. So let's get back. So this multimeter really doesn't have TrueRMS, no kidding. So forget about measuring it in noisy environments or any non-sinusoidal signals. This Fluke uses primitive averaging method. Well, let's find all my multimeters that don't have TrueRMS. It's this DT830 for $4, then this one for $6, and third comes Parkside for $16. And not to forget about Fluke for $160. Well, this Fluke is like 10 times more expensive than most expensive averaging multimeters I have, and 40 times more expensive than the cheapest one. This Fluke definitely takes us to 40 times lower budget, or 40 years back, because 40 years ago Fluke already had digital auto-ranging TrueRMS multimeter and it also had bar graph, not like this one. So 40 years ago I wasn't even alive back then and my quite old veteran car was just iron ore waiting to be mined. This is huge step backwards, no kidding. Why did you do this, Fluke? Current measurement, well, the big amps, they are okay. The resistance from socket to socket is just 37.6 milliohms, which is nice. Well, I apologize for not showing any measurements with this multimeter on video, because the video would otherwise be so long that you wouldn't watch it. So DCA measurement function is just as it should be. However, microamps, they have 7.4 ohms. And milliamps, they have 2 ohms. At 400 milliamps, you would have burden voltage between these holes of 0.8 volts. Such a measurement will affect your circuit under test very heavily. Combining this with poor 1.5% accuracy, well, this meter is rather unsuitable for low current measurement, only used in emergency. The Fluke 17B Plus can measure both frequency and duty cycle for currents, which is nice to have. Well, it can only measure frequency, but we will get to that soon. The meter doesn't remind you about blown fuse, which is the function I like about, for example, my my Hioki DT4261 and even my GVDA beginner multimeter. It also doesn't have sense for wrongly inserted bananas, so you may be perfectly able to unintentionally measure how many amps is there in the socket, and the number is high, believe me. I have also done this rookie mistake when I was like 10 or so maybe. So attempting to measure over 10 amps on this range will give us overload indication and no measurement. And the last thing, if you happen to blow your fuse, you need to strip the multimeter, remove the battery cover, unscrew 6 screws that go into plastic, and then you can change the fuses. It's normal today to have fuses accessible once you remove the battery cover. Everyone does this. Hioki has this. UNI-T has this. Just everyone has this. But not this Fluke, I don't know why. So accuracy. I used to test accuracy on a Chinese AD584 module, and not knowing if the analog device's chip was genuine or fake, I couldn't trust the voltage reference so much, so I constructed this reference. It's like multimeter checkbox. It also implements 9 resistances, 6 capacitances and 5 volt source. The 5 volt source has stability of 1 ppm for 1 milliamp or 1 Celsius difference. According to my testing on my normal, I can say that Fluke is very accurate on both resistance and voltage, but not so accurate on tiny capacities where it runs away a little. Well, measuring capacities with multimeters is always the last choice, and you wouldn't be measuring such low capacities that often anyway. If you are willing to measure capacitances, you should use such an LCR meter like this one, clap clap, with Kelvin probes. Now, the continuity or beep test, as I like to call it, is one of the most fundamental functions alongside with DCV and ACV for multimeter, and any multimeter must master these fundamentals, otherwise it's just bad one. I have multimeters that can do this perfectly, and you can easily adore these. I also have those that ain't that perfect, but they get it done, and they are just your second choice. Well, you wouldn't like multimeter that can't beep properly. And these that are slow, confused or silent, well, no one likes them anyway. So for continuity test, I use these UNI-T probes that came with my 61E+. They are as long as workday, but they are gold plated, so the surface, it's sharp. So the surface is immune to oxidation and they will always have perfect contact. Hioki also supplies only gold plated probes, but these are high-end and I don't want to scratch the gold of them. Regarding beeping, I also measure the volume of the beeper exactly 20 centimeters away from the multimeter's top side, because that's the closest one usually has his multimeter to his ear by having a good signal to noise ratio. So my measurement won't be affected by cars, motorbikes or our Tomcat or any nuclear explosion. Well, my Hioki DT4261, it has 70 decibels. Let's hear it. I will not measure it because the video would otherwise be so long, but let's hear it. It also backlights the display to red. So double indication. This is 70 decibels, and the reactions, they are just perfect, as it should be. It also instantly backlights display for visual. Now, my Unitrend has 65 decibels. I must press button. Well, Hiokis are perfect for this because you don't have to press any buttons, you just can beep as you get there. But any other multimeters, they require you to press your select button. So let's try UNI-T. "65 decibels, well, again, perfect beep reaction, and the secondary notification, well, it however takes some time, but it also recognizes 2 resistance levels. 65 decibels is the lowest volume acceptable by me. So I consider this one to be the bottom border. Now, my M probe, it doesn't do the beeping quite well, so better to dig up well and throw it there. 61 decibels. It's just too silent for me. And I have also tried changing the beeper for new original one, still no improvement. The reactions are slower too. I don't like this meter, although it was my first serious multimeter, it sucked at measurement speed at beeping. And it has only 61 decibels. And now, how many decibels does Fluke have? Well, it's not 70 like Hyoki, it's not 65 like UNI-T, it's not even 61 as M-probe, it's just 52.5 decibels. Can you believe it? Every 3 decibels lower sound means half the music power of the sound. It's times square root of 2 for voltage level and times half for music power every 3 decibels lower. So Fluke has 9 decibels less than this silent M probe. That's 2 power 3, which is 8. Fluke gives us 8 times lower beeping power than our too much silent M probe. What the heck, Fluke? How am I supposed to hear it? The reactions, well, they aren't perfect, but definitely acceptable. But lacking any visual indication, we must only rely on slow updating display and beeper that needs to try hard to actually overbeep typical background noise. Here in my amateur lab I had my adjustable load running at few tens of watts, so all the 4 fans there were rather silent. It's 600 watts loads. Well, gaming PCs are much noisier. I was having the Fluke and other multimeters laying on my desk when I noticed Fluke went auto power off after 20 minutes. I was thinking that Fluke doesn't notify me before it turns off, so I was preparing speech on how it just suddenly dies out of nowhere. And I then decided to try it one more time, but this time I turned off my DC converter testing to remove the noise from my 4 rather silent fans, and I was watching my stopwatch. And I focused when it was getting close, and the Fluke actually did the warning beep 1 minute before auto off. But at first I didn't even notice it, so I noticed all the other multimeters easily because I could hear them, but not the Fluke. So even if it actually beeps minute before auto off, you shouldn't count on that and rather turn off the auto off function if you want to measure for a long time. M-probe does the auto off actually best, as you can disable it when the multimeter is running. Just long press the rel button. This is auto, no, this is backlight. This is auto off icon, and I can turn it off or turn it on while the multimeter is running. I love this. Any other multimeters, they need to be turned on holding some button. APS off. But this M-probe can do it best. However, if you disable auto off an M-probe, it will eat your 9-volt battery in few days, and if you turn on the backlight and, God forgive me, the torch, you are then limited to just few seconds, maybe minutes of battery life, I don't know. So it's quite usual that when any better multimeter goes auto off, it spends few more minutes in half sleep state before it shuts down completely. For example, Hyoki will show APS on the display and consumption drops to 1/4. UNI-T also does this half sleep state but without any message, which is more usual. And this half sleep state, you can press whatever the button you want or move your selector by one click anywhere and the multimeter should wake up. If you don't do this, the multimeter would enter deep sleep and the only way is to go to off position and back again. This is normal and almost every multimeter has it like this, and it's convenient. Well, Fluke, once it turns off without you noticing the beep, it enters straight to deep sleep. So if you were measuring a water temperature while making homemade strawberry jam, for example, your gas stove will overnoise the beeper easily and you will have go back to, and you will have to go back to off and then go back to temp, while also sending some volts to your poor K-probe, because you will go through the resistance and through the capacitance test on your way back there. Nicely done. Yet another stupid screw up, Fluke. Diode test has open voltage of 2.4 volts. It's enough for classic diodes, red LED and maybe even green LED. Unfortunately, multimeters generally still have such low voltages for diode test, so this is unfortunately normal. Well, the only solution would be Fluke 18B Plus with LED test, or UNI-T 18B Pro, or just LM317 constant current source with 3-wire voltmeter at the end. Capacity measurement is one of the least used functions, or at least should be. You should at least use component tester that gives you ESR, but the most suitable instrument would be LCR meter, but these are too expensive for many hobbyists, and I know that. Capacity measurement with Fluke is the slowest I have ever done in my life. Usually, multimeters measure 1000 microfarads or 1 millifarad like 4 to 6 seconds. Fluke takes 12 seconds to do that. It's so slow, you should rather measure charging time through a resistor than to wait until Fluke finally spits up the value. Frequency can be measured for voltages and currents up to 1 MHz, which is usual. Hioki doesn't go that high and UNI-T goes way higher. Pressing this button once more takes us to the duty cycle measurements. So two things. First, have you noticed the high voltage indication? I don't have anything connected here. Well, look, I can even short it. Still, the high voltage indication is on. This is such a majestic error that it reports high voltage even if you don't feed it anything. The high voltage hazard indication just indicates no matter what. This is high voltage hazard, this is high voltage hazard. So a technician would then think that it's broken and he won't trust this function anymore, even if he's on genuine ACV and not these hertzometers. Such a mistake should never happen on any multimeter. Just like this Parkside, that's the exact opposite. It doesn't measure over 300 volts and it can sometimes freeze and show 0 volts while having 500 volts or 1 kilovolt at the input terminals. So these two multimeters, they are equally dangerous and I wouldn't let them pass any safety test on functionality. Well, back to duty cycle measurement, because it's another screw up from Fluke. As it may be there, but you won't be able to have it running. When probing on DC motors, like in a cordless drill, or when probing PWM controlled LED lights, the PWM frequency is usually from what I have seen, around 80 to 200 kHz. I test PWM duty cycle measurement for 100 kHz square signal, which is quite forgiving, as it's on the lower side, and Fluke doesn't do that. Fluke doesn't measure PWM duty cycle on even as low frequency as 100 kHz. So the duty cycle is there, the function is there, but from user perspective it isn't. And when it accidentally reads 50%, that's the duty cycle of inducted 50 Hz from mains. Temp measurement is a nice thing to have, and I am amazed by how many multimeters that still can't do that. For example, Hioki mostly doesn't have the temp measurement, just like my UNI-T. May they have added the perfectly useless HFE, but they forgot about perfectly useful temp. So Fluke can measure temp with 0.1 degree resolution. It's perfectly enough for basic contact measurement. So, to sum it up, I would give 1 star out of 5 stars if I was giving stars for this multimeter. So I will begin with things I like, cause it's easier. Officially, the multimeter is Cat 2 1000 volts and Cat 3 600 volts. Such an input protection in this multimeter should definitely withstand 1 degree more on both Cats, just like UNI-T or Hioki have. Mechanically, the durability is also on a high level. The multimeter is sturdy.
Battery consumption, it's perfect, although we know the multimeter has its reasons for that being too primitive. The fact that Fluke has made the adjustment manual public is a great thing, and actually I wish any multimeter brands would do that. On the other hand, I have never seen any good digital multimeter that would shift outside of its specification accuracy. Analogs, well, they are known for this, but these analogs, they just age, but digitals, they usually don't age. It would have to receive a serious beating like 1000 amps or few kilovolts or 1 kilovolt at ohm range or anything to actually shift any digital multimeter outside of its accuracy window. The carry case is made with good quality and it's quite convenient regarding its resistance against water or coffee splash. Now the neutral side of this multimeter. DC voltage, amps, resistance and diode measurement, they are acceptable. They are not that good to be $160 good, but acceptable. I could use them. The temp measurement is nice to have. With resolution down to 0.1 degree, I have nothing connected to it. It's enough for most of the jobs you will do with this measuring temps. And now the dark side, not park side, dark side. AC voltage, that's where it lacks TrueRMS. It returns us back by 40 years or throw us into 10 times less costly segment. ACV measurement will then work well only in pristine electric grid with just resistive, inductive or capacitive loads. No power supplies, no thyristor regulation. The fact that dangerous voltage indication comes up not only during switching ranges but also during frequency and duty measurements, well, there is no excuse for such a thing like this. It's just really bad and any company shouldn't pass such a stupid bug into production. You can't be serious about this, Fluke. Moreover, the duty cycle measurement not only triggers the high voltage no matter what, of course, but it also doesn't work no matter what. It won't work with usual PWM frequencies, so the function actually isn't here. It's not there because it doesn't work. Capacity measurement is just so slow that you would do better to charge your capacitor straight from Fluke's batteries through a resistor and you would know the capacity way sooner. And the continuity. The delay can be excused, but the buzzer cannot. How can you hear 52 decibel buzzer if your typical background has 45 or 50 decibels? Out of my 20 classic multimeters, only 2 are more silent. It's this, a Nank, it's like bad joke for 18 bucks, and this DT830 that actually has no buzzers. So these two are the only multimeters that are more silent than the overpriced Fluke. And you don't have visual indication here, so practically useless for most of the basic multimeter work. I couldn't notice even M-probe sometimes, because M-probe is also very silent. But Fluke is 8 times more silent. That's insane! Fluke also ships these TL75 smoking bubbly cow turd probes with most multimeters below $500, and these probes are only worth tossing them into the waste bin as their insulation is harder than Slipknot metal brand, and their nuclear missile ballistic caps will get you to jail if policeman finds them in your pockets. Just throw them away. Go on AliExpress, spend like $5 and you will be far better with these Chinese probes. So tell me, who the hell is responsible for testing this multimeter before production? So many bugs. It's even more buggy than my old one. And these old ones are really shitty. They are known for their bugs, and this one has 2 bugs that limits its functionality quite down. And they are also prone to failure because this selector has bad traces, but that's not a subject of this video. this multimeter is a little lower end with its price. Yes, little lower end, and the functionality doesn't reflect it at all. I actually got very angry at YouTube reviewers for not mentioning any of the bad properties of this multimeter. I cannot recommend this multimeter to anyone. If you are a hobbyist and you have approximately $200, go for Hioki, go for UNI-T. There must also be some other brands with good multimeters, but I haven't used them. I don't understand why there are people who force you their opinion to buy a Fluke if you are DIY or more or less professional electrician career as freelancer or anything else. Fluke got me electrocuted twice, and even newer model not covered by the recall is faulty, so Fluke is even not to be trusted in these waters of VDE testers. VDE is German standard. Moreover, with Fluke you pay for the brand, you pay for the logo, and you pay quite premium money, I would say. So one would say it would be backed up with their warranty and with their support. Hell no. A small family-owned company, you mean less than nothing to them. You may have paid the premium money, but you will never receive the appropriate service you paid for. I even registered my multimeter on their website and there was no confirmation email, nothing, no message, just nothing. Considering the amount of extra money you pay for the support that you won't receive, even in case of these testers that aren't that cheap, they are nowhere near cheap. It's the worst trade deal in history of trade deals, maybe ever, to buy a Fluke. Back to the multimeter. Even considering all its ugliness when it comes to functionality, I will keep it. Just for flex. No Germans, not for angle grinder, but just to look cool. You know, if a seller on AliExpress screws you, you can easily measure the actual parameters, and if you include Fluke in your measurement video or measurement photo, then it will be considered a reliable instrument. So if there is a sort of inspection or someone came to visit you, well, having this yellow Fluke on your table definitely improves your respect for GTA guys or charisma for Fallout guys by approximately 20 to 35%. People who are aware that this model is shit will know, but most of the people consider Fluke to be top of the line with infinite quality and infinite reliability, which is not true. But you can still flex on them with this $160 useless multimeter. Now I am aware Fluke has greater models and I know that these must be better. Well, I hope they are. They must be. Definitely. But the money you pay for them, well, for the money you would expect everything to be just perfect. Every single edge to be polished and every single function to be perfectly working as it should be. I have no experience with these more expensive ones, and some people have offered me a Fluke 177 and 78V Max. And just for your info, the guy with the 87V Max is not that amazed from what he wrote me, as he has some problems with his multimeter, and he also told me some of his opinions on this machine. But so I would definitely like to test some better Flukes if they are up to what they claim with their skyscraper high price and their renomme that goes as far as the infinite space. For the price you have to pay for them, I would expect nothing less than perfection in every aspect. So now you are free to leave any comments, but please leave them only if you have seen the entire video. If you are willing to be constructive, like to add some more info from your perspective, then do it. Just start typing. There is never too many opinions if you know where they come from. Yep, referring to the truth being a function that needs to be constructed with as many opinions as possible and that outputs different results based on different input parameters. Now, that's all. I wish you safe working with electric equipment and see you in another video.